You know, the battle for human health is a story that's always changing. For centuries, we fought one kind of enemy, things like plagues and infections. But just as we've started to win some of those old battles, a whole new set of challengers has stepped into the ring. So let's really dig into what's happening to our health on a global scale.
So, let me ask you something right off the bat. Just take a second and think about it. If you had to guess the single biggest cause of death in the world right now, what would it be?
Well, whatever you just thought of, the real answer has changed, and I mean dramatically in a super short amount of time. The whole landscape of what makes us sick and what we die from has been completely redrawn since just the year 2000.
To really get what's going on, we're going to do a little then and now. We'll look at the hard data, comparing the global health picture from the year 2000 to 2016. And trust me, this comparison tells an absolutely fascinating story about where we've been, and maybe more importantly, where we're going.
Okay, so let's start with the top 5 biggest killers. Back in 2000, you see heart disease and stroke at the top. No huge surprise there. But look at 2016. Something big happened. Diarrheal diseases, a classic infectious problem, got knocked off the list, and boom, a totally new challenger appears. Alzheimer's and other dementias. That's a massive change.
And listen, we're not talking about a small bump here. The number of deaths from dementia more than doubled in that short time. It literally shot up the charts to become one of the top 5 leading causes of death on the planet. This is a huge sign that the very nature of our health challenges is shifting under our feet.
And then there's diabetes. This one's a big deal. In 2000, it caused less than 1 million deaths. By 2016, that number jumped to a staggering 1.6 million. This is a perfect example of a chronic, non-communicable disease, the kind you can't catch from somebody else, becoming a major global threat.
But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. There are some incredible public health success stories in this data too. Just look at HIV/AIDS. It was the 7th leading cause of death back in 2000. By 2016, it had fallen completely out of the top 10. This is proof positive that when the world comes together with focus and resources, we can absolutely turn the tide.
So when you pull back and look at the whole top 10 list side by side, the pattern just jumps right out at you. In 2000, the list is still packed with infectious diseases, TB, HIV, things that spread. But fast forward to 2016, and they've been pushed way down, replaced by chronic conditions, things like lung cancer, diabetes, and dementia.
Okay, so the big question is, why? What's actually driving this huge worldwide shift in how we live and die? Well, it's not random. There's actually a really solid theory that explains exactly what's going on.
It's a concept called the epidemiological transition. Sounds kind of academic, right? But it's actually pretty simple. It just means that as countries get richer and more developed, with better food, clean water, and medicine, they stop dying from infections and start living long enough to develop chronic diseases instead.
You can almost think of it like this. Humanity has lived through 2 different ages of disease. For most of history, we were in the first stage, battling ancient enemies like the plague, tuberculosis, and just plain starvation. Now, a huge part of the world has moved into a second age, an age defined by modern killers like heart disease, cancer, and diabetes.
Okay, but here's where it gets really complicated. This big transition, it isn't happening for everyone at the same time or at the same speed. It's really a tale of 2 different worlds, and your health risks depend almost entirely on which one you live in.
And I mean, the difference is just night and day. In wealthier countries, the main health worries are those chronic diseases we've been talking about. But in many developing nations, the old enemies are still very much in charge. We're talking malaria, TB, HIV, and respiratory infections.
This creates what experts call the double burden, and it's a huge problem. It's like, imagine trying to fight a war on 2 completely different fronts at the same time. These countries are still battling the infectious diseases of the past, but now they're also getting hit with a rising tide of chronic diseases, and on top of all that, a growing threat from things like car accidents.
So you'd think that's complicated enough, right? Well, hold on, because we're also seeing totally new threats pop up on the radar. The future of global health is even more complex than this current picture suggests.
I mean, we're seeing stuff like measles making a comeback because of vaccine hesitancy. We're seeing brand new viruses jump from animals to humans, think SARS, or more recently, COVID-19. Climate change is letting insects like mosquitoes carry diseases into new parts of the world. And then there's the really big one, mental health, which has quietly become the single leading cause of disability across the globe.
So, with all this going on, this mix of old diseases, new chronic conditions, and brand new threats,
What do we do? How on earth do we prepare for this new reality? What does the strategy for a healthier future even look like?
Well, the first thing we have to do is focus. And it turns out there's a huge clue right in the data. A staggering 70% of all deaths worldwide come from just 4 groups of diseases, what some call the Big Four: cardiovascular disease, cancer, respiratory diseases, and diabetes. That tells us exactly where to aim our efforts.
So that gives us a clear game plan, a 3-pronged strategy, really. Number 1, prevention. We have to get serious about things like smoking, bad diets, and not getting enough exercise. Number 2, we have to beef up our healthcare systems so they're built for long-term chronic care, not just quick fixes for infections. And number 3, we need a rock-solid global surveillance system to spot the next pandemic before it spirals out of control.
At the end of the day, this is about more than just medicine or hospitals. It's about a fundamental shift in how we think. We have to move away from a system that just treats people when they're already sick and move toward a system that actively builds healthier societies from the very beginning.
You know, we got so good at fighting the diseases that hunted our ancestors. But the irony is, a lot of our biggest threats today, heart disease, diabetes, many cancers, are diseases of lifestyle. They're products of the modern world we built. And that leaves us with one last, really tough question to think about. Are we prepared to win the fight against the health crises that we, in many ways, created ourselves?